Hello friends, my name is Marines, and today I want to talk about my experience reading Such a Fun Age by Kiley Reid. I had heard some buzz about this book and I'd seen the cover a couple of times, but it wasn't on my immediate radar to read. I did some traveling a couple of weeks ago, and usually when I travel I either read an ebook or listen to an audiobook. I had a little bit of extra time at the airport, so I ended up looking at the books at the airport, and I don't know, it kind of spoke to me at that moment, and I felt like it was a good time to read a physical book. And I was actually walking to the register with a book I had selected in my hands, and when I came out of that area I saw that there was a little mini display of like best-selling books, and my eye was immediately drawn to Such a Fun Age. So this book is about a 25-year-old woman named Amira. She's a black woman that is kind of lost and directionless after college, and she ends up taking a part-time babysitting job for a woman named Alix Chamberlain who has two daughters, and Amira is mostly charged with taking care of the older daughter, the toddler Briar. Alix is kind of an influencer. She has this business. Basically, she started it by writing letters to companies and getting free stuff, and then it kind of turned into this empowerment influencer sort of business. Alix's husband is a news anchor, and he kind of accidentally says something racist while on air, so their house is egged, but I guess they throw the egg hard enough that it breaks a window, so they have to call the police. But Alix doesn't want Briar there while the police come, so she calls Amira. It's like midnight at this point, and Amira is at a birthday party. She's dressed for the club, but she needs the extra money, so she decides to leave the party and go help the Chamberlains out. She picks up Briar and just takes her to the local grocery store to like kill time, and because the little toddler likes the grocery store, she brings a friend along with her, and they're entertaining the toddler by like dancing in the aisles, and a woman passing by basically alerts the security guard because the two women are black and the little girl is white, and they assume that Amira has kidnapped the little girl. It turns into a confrontation that somebody else, another shopper, gets on video, and Amira ends up having to call Mr. Chamberlain to come and basically get her out of the situation because they're not letting her leave. That all is like the back of the book description. It is the inciting incident, but that is all I knew about the book, and so I expected it to be very heavily about that, about existing while black caught on camera. And this incident does very heavily influence the rest of the story, and it does feel like a jumping off point, but this story was different than I expected it to be, and it surprised me with what it ended up being, which I think is much more about a coming of age story for Amira, and it is much more about existing while black, period. Just not at this moment caught on camera, but everything about Amira's life, working for this white family, trying to figure out her direction. And then also she gets involved with a man throughout the course of the story, and because of this incident, Alix really wants to get to know Amira and almost becomes obsessed with Amira. I really loved this book. I really loved this book. So I'm gonna take you through the elements of it that I enjoyed, starting with the writing. I think my favorite thing about this book, and the reason that I rated it 5 stars personally, is that I truly enjoyed the writing. I will say that in general, it is simple. It is less literary than you would probably imagine, and there is something about it that just gives the feeling of enabling this to have like mass appeal. It is that smooth, easily consumable, and simple. But the thing that I think sets it apart is just how witty Reid's writing is. As I mentioned, I mostly read this like in public, on a plane, at airports, and I was laughing to myself. I think the place where Reid really shines is just in her like keen, wonderful descriptions of people, and how she captures an entire person in just this description. She kept talking about people in ways that I felt like I've seen that woman, I know that man, like I've come across these people in my real life. Reid is just observant, and it comes through in her writing. This is also really dramatic. The story is really dramatic, and it's interesting because nothing too out of the ordinary happens. Again, these all feel like people that I could meet and I could come across in situations that could really happen, not only today, but in the year that it was set, which is about 2015. And so that felt so accessible and relatable, but the way that she tells the story is really dramatic. It reminded me of Elena Ferrante and the Neapolitan novels, and these two books like share nothing else in common except for the way that Ferrante can really just write about everyday life in a market and this neighborhood and a wedding and someone wearing a particular pair of shoes, and you're just on the edge of your seat for the way that it feels like a soap opera. Such a Fun Age has that same exact feeling. Things happen that feel like everyday life, and yet they are told with a flair and a drama that keeps you reading and really headed towards the end. I will say that even though this tackles some heavy topics and there were things that made me laugh and really wry observations and things that made me think in a larger context, this did feel like it had a light touch. It wasn't hammering the message over your head. It really was all about those observations and describing people and actions and situations, and then just letting you draw your own conclusions from there. I love Amira as a character. I feel like it was so relatable, the sort of age, the 25 age that she was at, and just kind of feeling a little bit lost. I've never been a person that had like a very clear view of like, you know, I was born knowing that this was what I was going to do. I feel like very few people have that. Most of us kind of take steps and figure it out along the way, and Amira just hasn't figured out what she's passionate about yet. And so she is worried about what she's gonna do, and her friends are all kind of figuring it out. They are graduating and they are getting promotions and they're becoming more stable in their financial life, and she feels the pressure to do this without having found out what she's really good at. And she likes what she's doing, she likes babysitting, but it always feels like it's not a serious job, especially because it's part-time. So I just related to her very, very much. But I also, I think that a lot of times when there is a main character who is a little bit more reserved about their emotions, people tend to say that they're non-developed character. But you know, that doesn't mean that this character is not developed. It just means that this is the way that this character is. And so it almost feeds into the theme of the book, where people feel entitled to Amira, and it's almost like a commodification of Black women. And you see the main love interest and you see her boss just really entitled to her time, to conversation, to knowing how she feels about everything. And it almost seats this idea of a white savior complex in just like an everyday life situation, because the white people that she's engaging with want to save Amira. And so the fact that she almost reads a certain way to people, a little closed off or whatnot, almost doubles down on the theme of like wanting more or feeling more entitled to Amira. I know it's not quite right because it is a character, and obviously we're here to hear from her thoughts in this book or whatnot, but I just think it's a really interesting dynamic at the end of the day. Personally, like I said, I never felt like we didn't get enough from Amira. I enjoyed her character, and especially through her interactions with her best friends. She has this group of female best friends who are all women of color, and I freaking love them. They can be messy at times and they're young in certain aspects, but just the way that they help each other out, that they are honest with each other, that they, I don't know, there was something about them that it just reminded me of my group of best friends, especially around that age. It just warmed my heart. I loved all of them. I loved that dynamic, and the dialogue was just really wonderful in this entire book. Again, it felt like something so real and relatable. Alix is a very interesting character to me because I wasn't sure, like I went on a whole journey with her. At the beginning, like I was more willing to give her the benefit of the doubt, but the more and more she seats herself in this sort of like white savior role, and the more and more you see that it is very self-serving, like your feelings really start to sour on her. Every once in a while there's something that happens to her that she says that you're like, that I get it, like that's relatable. But I think that the whole thing with her and the main male love interest is that they are so focused on not being racist that they almost like overcorrect and like just head into another land of racism. Like they're still on the spectrum, but they do too much almost, and she definitely falls into that trap. Another thing that I saw people complaining about, and a big reason that a lot of people gave this 4 versus 5 stars, was the ending. I loved it, but I also enjoy endings that are left a little bit open in the right situation. So this cleaned up the main action of the story, but the ending itself was just kind of like, that's the way it is. Everybody keeps living their lives. And I enjoyed that because I don't know, it ties into this idea that people, even when their racism is challenged in a specific instance or things of that nature, people in privilege just get to continue living in privilege. Like, it is not very often that somebody is challenged in a way that has real significance or consequences for them, or that changes their mind in a way that allows them to change how they're living. And so everybody just kind of, I don't know, it just is like, and everybody keeps keeping on is sort of the thing that you feel at the end of the book. And so some people felt unsatisfied with that, but that is life. And, you know, even when you encounter racism in real life, especially as a woman of color, there isn't like a big, you know, I don't know, it changes you, it marks you, it changes how you see the world, but that's an aggregate thing. There is nothing in that moment. There's no ending that could have been like a tidy bow of, and that's what racism taught her, because this is what racism will continue to teach her throughout her life, is kind of the way that I felt about it. And it even talks about just, you know, how this period in her life later kind of affects her and how she reflects on it, but that is as much of an ending as a story like this could possibly get. I totally get why that leaves people feeling a little wanting, but I loved it. I thought it was the perfect ending for this particular story. Even down to the title, you see how witty that Kiley Reid is. Such a fun age can refer to any number of characters or the whole situation of this book. It is either, you know, Alix in her 30s trying to figure out how to be a businesswoman and a mother to 2, or it can be Amira at 25 trying to figure out what to do and how to become financially secure, or it can be Briar as a toddler discovering and finding things out, or it can just be like this moment in time. This was kind of the moment where, you know, people being captured on camera, Black people being captured on camera, and these things going viral, that was really taking off. We had a Black president, so it was kind of this idea that we were in a post-racist society. And so just the way that on the journey to being woke, that people forget that Black women and women of color are still people. And it was just so interesting to me that in all of this, everybody was treating Amira in a certain way. Like, they wanted to know everything about her. They wanted to see it, they were interested in her and what she thought. They wanted to be approved by Amira. They wanted her, like Alix thinks about how much she wants Amira to know that her favorite shoes are from Payless and she has a Black friend. So it's that desperate desire to find Amira's approval, that almost like commodification, as I said. And all Amira is worried about is like, I need a full-time job and I'm gonna get kicked off my parents' insurance plan. That idea of using Black women or Black people in this sort of like journey to wokeness doesn't stop with Amira. You see it in things like Alix using her one and only Black friend in order to, you know, pass ideas by her and make sure she's got her approval and present her to Amira like, look, it's my Black friend. Or the love interest walks into a bar with 4 Black men. And so it's like, he's like, see? I've got Black friends. It's just all of those little details worked so well together. Obviously, I've been gushing about this book, so I really enjoyed it. It is just the kind of everyday drama and witty writing that I love. And it is the kind of book that invites you to think more deeply and to think about all of the pieces that the author has laid out for you, which I also love. It was like the perfect book for me. That's it for me today. I would love to talk to you guys in the comments about if this has ever happened to you, if you've ever picked a book up based on the description, but then it surprised you with the real direction that it took. I'd also love to talk to you if you have read or would like to read Such a Fun Age by Kiley Reid. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon. She picks up like I could not. that idea, and that idea of using